Welcome to part 2 of my series discussing the topic of health. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts and the how-to and the exact details about physical health, social well-being, and mental health, I believe that it is time to talk about the preparation, and that's what I'd like to talk about today. Undoubtedly, most of us have tried to be healthy at one time or another, and yet here we are trying again. So we need to prepare properly, don't we now? As someone famously coined the expression, if you repeat the same action and expect a different result, there's a word for that. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people have tried to be healthy in the past and have tried again and have tried again. I believe that's one of the main problems. People go on fad diets or trendy things and they fail. You have to think of it as a long-term change. So you have to have all three parts working together. That way you form good habits. You form good habits for a long time so that when you do, and sometimes it will, we're all human, you slip off a little bit, then the slipping won't be so bad, so then you won't have as much to make up. So yeah, you go from this, which is really, really hard on the system, the really high highs and the really low lows over a short period of time, and you just keep bouncing up and down and up and down, to maybe something more like this. Something that is a lot more even-tempered over time. You stretch the time axis. That just helps you just alleviate. So maybe, yeah, it's not going to be, the results are not going to be a week or a month. It might take us 6 months to see really good progress, but those gains will be permanent. Or at least more permanent than anything you've done before. So that's what I'm trying to get to is this message of preparedness. So as an engineer, I like to say that a well-understood problem is mostly solved, and it's really true. You really have to understand, and you have to take a really, really, really hard look at yourself in the mirror. Self-honesty is required. You have to look around. You have to consider what is your goal, what is your life like now, and how do you think you're going to get there. So to prove this point, or to explain this point, I'm going to share a little bit of my story. I was quite heavy. I weighed upwards, actually above 270 pounds. I smoked, and I was just not active, and I ate whatever. There was no realistic way for me to think that I could just one day to the next cold turkey everything and change my ways and it'd be a lasting solution. That just wasn't realistic. I should say first and foremost, before you do anything, do go see a doctor, get checked out. Starting to be healthy, making changes, you do have to make sure that you don't have anything, some underlying condition that's going to either get made worse by doing it or something that could really be tragically worse. If you start exercising, for example, and you have some heart problem or whatever, and it's gonna make you keel over and die, that's obviously not the result you want. So safety first, and this isn't just me shading the liability on this. I'm serious. Go see a doctor, start the conversation, and see where you are. Get a baseline. I went to a yearly screening, and basically my numbers weren't terrible, and the person who read the numbers, she was a dietitian, I remember her vividly. She just started discussing with me what habits I had, and she said, hey, you're kind of looking like maybe if you go down this path, you might consider that it's going to be problematic, long-term health-wise. And so we were discussing, well, how? I said, well, I've tried it before. How do I do it? How do I change? How do I make it happen? And she said, well, you should look into this particular book, and this isn't a fad. This is a doctor that wrote this stuff. It doesn't have to be followed exactly, but it's some pretty good principles. And I did. I read the book, and that's kind of what started the process of wanting to change. So after I got talking to the dietitian, I read this book, and I'll get to it in that particular book. I'll get to it in nuts and bolts when I talk about nutrition and stuff like that. But for now, let's just say that it was excellent food for thought to get started. I needed to get exercise, but how? How do you start? How is it possible to get that going? And I was still smoking. It was difficult. It was a commitment. The way I did it is I started by just going swimming. Just get active And then once I got going a little bit, then I was able to find a smoking cessation program at work and go through that program, because it just needed to be something, something that I wanted to change, not just something I had to change. Huge contributor to your success. It's one thing to plan for it, and it's not, you pick a date or whatever it is, but you have to want it. So that's part of that honesty bit. You really have to want it. You have to look at yourself in the mirror, look at where you are, and like I said, not just physically. You have to look around. Do you have good relationships? Do you have some nagging mental issues? I mean, there was a lot going on with me when I started, and I didn't immediately go to the mental health part because there's so much stigma associated with it. But I did, because I realized that it was definitely an important part, that nothing else was happening because of it. So making a plan, that just comes in whatever flavor you make a plan. Like I said, being an engineer, I tend to overthink. The plan for me started by, like I said, started to swim, and we started with the smoking cessation, and we started to change a little bit of our diet, but there was not it wasn't an immediate change. We had a health emergency for my wife. She had an emergency situation, and so when she recovered, that was a good opportunity for us to kind of get, okay, we start the program now, we can really get with it. And so that gave us a good deadline. We had planned on it, but then that's just sort of precipitated the events. And by the time we did it, I have to say that I said I'd already been swimming a little bit. There was just enough drive by then, because I was starting to feel better and I was starting to really be stronger and feel healthier. I was already wanting to just do the next step. So it was natural. It was a natural progression in the plan. It wasn't such a compartmentalized plan where you just go to the next step. Oh, today you do this. Well, that may work for some people, but I think if you remove that element of have to, and it's just something that you want to do and it's just a natural progression, that's something that'll be a lot more successful. The proper planning, like I said, is essential, because if you want it to be a lasting change, you have to plan for the long run. So like I said before earlier in this video, you stretch the time axis. So all these reactions, all the highs and the lows become stretched over time. So they're not so high and they're not so low, and you always point in the right direction. And that's the most important thing. So I want to talk about what happens when you slip off a little bit. So a couple of years ago, it took me a couple of years to get there, and a couple of years ago I was at my peak. I had reached my goals. I did the triathlons, and I was super healthy. Some say I was too thin, which I was. But then what? What do you do when it's done? So it's hard to keep going. The point is, if you have good habits, you may not have a goal and you may not be as easy to maintain, but at least you have the habits. So now 2 years later, yes, I've gained maybe 10, 15 pounds. Okay, I've gained 20 pounds. So a couple of years after the fact, I still have the good habits. I just don't have the intensity. So now in order for me to get back there, I don't have to change everything again. I don't have to make this huge turnaround. I know, first of all, I know that I can do it because I've done it. And then I know how to do it, well, because I've done it. So now I just need to find the motivation and just kind of get myself open to being that motivated again. So again, this is just my approach. I want to stress that the plans that I'm outlining here work for me. I have no doubt that the plans that I'm going to talk about, the specifics, some people just won't do, and that's okay. Whatever works. It's just that there's some things sometimes that have to be done, and preparation, proper preparation, is the key. Have an honest look at yourself. You have to really take a hard look. It's not easy. It's just not easy. So I believe this wraps up the introductory and preparation part of the series. I think next videos I will start getting into the nuts and bolts. I know some people will probably say, geez, Oliver, keep Stop talking about it already. Just do it.
Just do it!
Yes, I agree. It's time. Thank you for watching. Thumbs up, subscribe, and